to Gardening at Home with Charles.
Hey guys.
Thanks, Charles, for doing another session with us.
Thanks for having me. So today's lesson plan is really from planning to planting. And I get a lot of questions from my friends and family about where to plant what. So I really want to just help everyone, just guide them through a bunch of different stuff. Things that you would need in order to just really start. Like the most important thing that you really need in a garden is sunshine. So anytime you go outside, just try to look at an opportune spot where the sun shines, because a lot of things, tomatoes, basil, herbs, different things like that, they all need full sun in order to really produce good results. So you should really think about the sun and not necessarily think about wanting that, green acres look of just a square, flat field to work with everything. Because a lot of times, the advantage is a lot of times you have things that are obstacles or they look like obstacles. And in actuality, there are advantages. So I'm just going to show you more or less what I did with my stuff. So over here, what I did was I didn't want to have all my vegetables so close to everything. So this I did exclusively as a herb garden. So what I did was I did basil over here, parsley, dill, cilantro, rosemary, thyme, oregano, tarragon, chives, and more oregano. So kind of what I did was I made sure that everything in this area.
Can everybody hear him okay?
Could you hear me? Could you see me? So everything in this area is pretty much perennial. So I really don't have to plant it again next year. So I wanted to have accurate spacing between everything. And also what I did was I made sure that if I did a row of something, I had a front stock and a back stock. That would be easily accessible for the front. And when I wanted to go into the back and give the front plant a break from clipping, I'd be able to go into the back. And then
A little hard to hear you, Charles. It's a little hard to hear.
So I wanted to make sure that the front plant I would be able to access. And when I clipped it, back a bit far, to the point that I wanted it to regenerate and I wanted to stop growing, I would have a back plant as a reserve, like a backup plant. So I'd be able to get into the backup plant and give the front plant a break. So I think it's a good way of planting everything because it's a good way of almost like a retailer, just having backup stock. And it's also, you should make sure that all your herbs are accessible from the outside. And if you have to hop over a bit and go to the back, it's not a bad idea either. So like over here I have a mint plant that I grew. We talked about mint. I bought these planters for like $20. This one I think was 30. And they're really, really easy to fill up with mint. Every so often, you have to cut them back. You kind of get dead ends like this that you might want to rip out just to help instigate like new growth within a mint planter. The same thing with oregano. Next year, like my oregano is going to get a little dried out. In the beginning of the season, it's a good idea to clear out the old herbs, the old branches, and just put a little bit of somebody's calling me. Jeez, who is that?
Sorry.
That's okay. So you want to make sure I don't know, this guy from Rhode Island that wants me to drive 4 hours to a warehouse. I really don't want to deal with it. I'm sorry. So so this is all old, like a lot of the old growth you can clear out and it helps regenerate new growth. This one happens to be all new and pretty soon it'll fill up. I like to keep this by the pool because we like mojitos, and you could just clip back a couple, make mojitos outside, and it's really, really fun. So what I would do is I would let this one grow and probably start taking from this one once it regenerates. So I'll probably give a mint plant a break for another couple of weeks. So this pretty much where I did this is not so far away from the kitchen. So even if it's raining, I would be able to go outside and do a couple of clippings. You don't need a lot with fresh herbs. You could just, take a handful of stuff and really make it into a presentation. I wanted to share a couple of recipes with you guys afterwards. One of my favorite herbs that I feel like is really, really underrated is cilantro. And cilantro happens to be really, really great, amazingly fresh spice and herb. I found a recipe online at one of these Sephardic food websites that was related to, they put reference to a kibbutz in Israel. So this kibbutz in Israel, they're the first kibbutz in Israel to make sweet cherries. And what they did was they decided to pair these sweet cherries with cilantro. And if you've ever been to like one of these kibbutzes in Israel, they can make like a salad out of French fries and taco chips. You know, they'll take anything that they have on hand and mix together. But cherries and cilantros really, really work very good together as a salad. I wanted to share that recipe with everyone. Let's see my lesson plan. So sometimes obstacles could be both advantageous and beautiful. So sometimes you don't necessarily have like a large space to work with, but if you could come up with an interesting space, it could be a very, very attractive garden. So you could also think about something my mother-in-law does, and that I did this year as well, is having like 2 different gardens. You don't have to have everything in one space. You could split your spaces and maybe have something in one spot, maybe in another. Maybe if you want something a bit more tucked away, where you know, you don't want your neighbors to think that you come out in overalls, or you want it maybe a little bit behind the house in a sunny spot, that's okay too. You could plant multiple things in different places, and it really, really works good. And yes, I'll show you the other space if you like.
I have a question, Charles. You mentioned the herbs
Sure.
being perennial. All of these
Yeah.
herbs come back each year?
Not all of them. Not all of them. So okay, so thyme comes back every year, oregano comes back every year, and chives come back every year. I did have luck with some other herbs. I should have brought this out. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Wait.
Yeah, that's nice.
So this area was pretty much against the wall, but it got very good sunlight. There was all kinds of construction waste back here, and the construction waste was really just, this was like a nothing corner. And as you can see, it's a long garden. This is, it's about 3.5 feet wide, which isn't that much space, maybe 4 feet wide, but it goes down about 25 feet. So I was very lucky that I kind of thought outside of the box, and I utilized kind of that space. It's behind the house. So it's really, you do that with any house. If you feel like there's enough space and enough sunlight, you could really get amazing results. So when you plant something like this, besides herbs, when you plant herbs, you could kind of put them with an accurate spacing, maybe having oregano towards the side or hanging over because it likes to trail, maybe having parsley.
Where's the oregano over there?
Oh no, the oregano was in the herb garden.
Oh.
This is only vegetables, and with a few exceptions, and I'll explain. I did have a couple of excess herbs because a lot of times you buy more than you could plant. Yeah, we all wish that we were on 2 acres, but we're not. You're more limited with your spacing. So what I did was I planted a lot of basil from seed, which I'll show you this way. My cameraman Joel, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, so I planted these basils from seed. And what I did was I integrated them into this is all over here. From here to here is all of my tomato patch. So all these tomatoes I grew from seed. My mother-in-law actually got me these, which are really, really great. Little plant labels. You could buy like a pack for like 10 of them for like $1. And they really help you because sometimes you plant things and you forget what you planted, which tomato you actually put in. So louder? I'm sorry. So yeah, so basil, incorporating rows of basil in between your tomatoes really does help keep away harmful bugs like aphids, and you know, it's a good way of kind of breaking it up. Also, I happen to love basil, and if you haven't had a pesto made with homemade basil, it really doesn't get any better than that. You could experiment with it. You could do it parve. Instead of putting pine nuts, if you hate pine nuts, you could put walnuts or macadamia nuts and utilize them in a pesto. The other day, my brother does like really, really good pizza. So we did a pizza with fresh basil pesto on top. Experiment with different cheeses in a pesto, like a Gran Padano or a sharp Parmesan, or you could keep it part of them, put it with a steak, and you know, it happens to be a really, really phenomenal thing, and we love basil in this house. So yeah, what I did was I put a lot of basil in between the tomato rows, because that was a very good way of keeping away the bugs, number one. Number two is just planting more and more basil, which I really love. So I also did the heavier tomatoes. These over here are more beefsteak tomatoes. Those over there are cherry tomatoes. So the beefsteak tomatoes, I planted up against my wall because I really, really wanted them to have some support. I'll probably put tomato cages up later on in the season, but as of right now, you know, tomatoes aren't necessarily the most stable of plants. So by keeping them up against the wall, it really does help with their growth structure. Back over here, I have some, over here you see I have cucumbers. So these are my cucumbers, which I put up against the trellis. These trellises you could buy about $20. And when the cucumbers grow a little bit bigger, they'll most probably climb up this trellis. And that's a good way of keeping, you know, some growth off of the garden. And vines generally like to climb things like peas, things like string beans, things like cucumbers, zucchini. They all like to climb up trellises. So a trellis is a really good idea, especially if you're working against the wall, to you know, generally produce better results. Eggplants I kind of put all together. I have a bunch of peppers over here. Over here I have zucchini, and I'll probably put some more pickling cucumbers in front. Over here I bought some cabbage, and over here, this is what happens to most gardeners: things die. So I bought artichoke, and I never had good luck with artichoke plants, and they don't look too good, but it's okay, because it looks like I'm going to get a lot of other yield with different stuff. So really what I want to discuss also is how with the herb garden, you could just kind of put things as they are, but with a vegetable garden, you really want to consider how the plants grow. And it could be very advantageous to do your research on what to put next to something else in order to really yield the best results. Another thing I really want to discuss is, now that I'm kind of done with my planting of vegetables, me and Linda and my mother-in-law, everybody else that likes the garden, started talking about sunflowers. And I'm not a big Vincent van Gogh fan at all, but sunflowers are really, really nice. They grow really, really well, and you could stick them in a lot of corners where you don't necessarily have, you know, that aren't very pretty, and it's a good way of kind of covering them up. And on top of that, what you could do is you could utilize them later on for seeds, which I really intend on doing. I love sunflower seeds. I could go through like bags and bags of them. If anyone's looking to just buy sunflower seeds, you should go to Shalom on Norwood Avenue. He's really got like the absolute best. But this year I'm going to try to grow my own from scratch and see what happens. So I'm going to show you where I did while I was on the phone last night.
How do you, okay, so we had some questions, just so you know, still about these. How do you prep, I think Joy meant, and then how do you control animals eating the plants?
Okay, so the best thing to do to keep animals away from your plants is most probably to gate it in. This, like, my parents' backyard is gated in. We don't really get deer back here. We'll get birds. Birds could destroy certain things. So, like some of my cucumber and yellow squash plants got some bird action. What I really want to do is get a bird bath, because they say birds most of the times they like to drink from a plant, because that's the way of getting moisture. They can drink from a pool. It's chlorine or salinated, so they don't really like that. So by getting a bird bath, it's a good way of like stopping your birds from picking at things. Deers, you could spray. A lot of times a deer spray works, but you do have to reapply it after the rain, and you have to kind of be on top of it throughout the season. If it's a bug, that is going after your vegetables, you might want to consider buying ladybugs. I know it's a crazy thing, but ladybugs eat aphids, and you could buy them on Amazon, dump a bucket of ladybugs out there, and they protect your garden. They're your little pets that you don't have to feed. And or you could spray pesticides. You could get, you know, all kind of bug killer or insect killer, but I try not to do that because, you know, I feel like it's a lot of times that stuff kind of trickles into your food, and you kind of want something more fresh. In terms of rodents and stuff like that, those guys are really tough. Chipmunks and squirrels and whatever. A gate sometimes keeps them out, sometimes not. The taller the gate, probably the better. But deer, spray or gate. There's a lot of, you kind of have to identify what's going on in your garden.
Do you know if red pepper
How do you
works?
prep?
Red pepper, I've done that in the past. What, red pepper flake?
I don't know. I've heard that if you put red pepper around the bottom, that somehow that keeps the like squirrels away. I
Sometimes
don't know if it works.
animals really don't like pepper in particular. I used to sit there. There was a recipe for like sriracha and water that you put in a water spray bottle and you spray everything, but and it worked. But after the rain, if you weren't careful enough to reapply it, they would just go right back to it. Or ducks. Sometimes my duck, we would have ducks that would come and eat things, so we would give them, leave pieces of bread with sriracha, which probably wasn't the nicest thing.
Oh my gosh.
So they didn't come back anymore.
Wow.
It wasn't. It was not very nice of us. But you know, they shouldn't have gotten my tomatoes. So
Before we were married, I wouldn't have left.
Yeah. She wouldn't have liked that. But, it really depends. You have to kind of identify. Look at each leaf. See what's going on. Is it like the deer sit there and take chunks? You know, I would have better luck with growing tomatoes in Brooklyn than I would in Deal, because the squirrels really wouldn't go for that much, but the deers would. And the deers, like, they just chomp it down to the nub. But yeah, you really have to understand what you're up against and try to battle it like that. A good raised garden bed, I wish I had the time to put it in here, but I didn't. I did this all myself. So another question, how do you prep? Now, prepping is a very difficult situation. Joel had a lot of patience with me. It took me 8 hours to do this one garden on his Labor Day Sunday. So pretty much all the soil was like, you have to excuse my brushing sound. I'm feeling kind of Israeli today, but the soil was all pretty much like this, like sod covered with grass. And the quality of the soil was pretty sandy topsoil, like typical Jersey. So what I did was I dug out about 6 inches to 8 inches down on this whole side. We used a hoe, a rake, and a shovel in order to take out this entire space. So you're talking 25 by 4 feet, more or less. It was like 100 square feet of space. We mixed around the soil. We put in new soil. So this soil is a combination between potting soil and topsoil. So I wanted to make sure that everything, and you see how like the grade of the soil is about 4 inches higher than the regular soil. I made sure that they pretty much had about 8 inches of good planting soil where the vegetables could grow for next year. And we combed the entire space of like debris. You know, there was construction debris in there, wires and, pieces of cement and all this other junk in there, rocks. I have like a whole rock pile over there. We made sure to really have relatively clean soil before we put on some high quality soil. Now, if I really wanted to save time, I would maybe just loosen it up a little bit and then just, build up 8 inches of soil on top of that. Or if you were dealing with a flush space, to go ahead, put a gardening box or like a planting box over it and then just fill that up with soil. But, you should really try to make friends with the landscaper, because this took about 2 or 3 yards of soil in order to fill in the space. So that it's a lot of, you're talking about, I don't even know how many cubic feet of soil that it is, but it was quite a lot of space that we needed in order to fill the soil up.
You didn't mix in any compost with the soil that you used?
I didn't. I put a little bit of plant food on top. I didn't mix in compost. Actually, I would really, really love to compost over here, but like My parents won't let me. If that's okay to say.
Well, because what happened the first
You
time?
could buy a bag of
When I was
compost. too.
17 and I first started to compost, I left compost out on the kitchen counter and we got maggots. So like, yeah. Like they still,
Exactly.
right. 15 years later, they still don't trust me, and I understand it. I get it.
But they sell
It's
bags
really
of
fun to
compost too.
what?
They sell compost in big bags also.
That's
Oh.
true. They have compost, they have hummus. You'd want something rich in there in order to really provide the best results with your plants. And I just wanted to really share with everybody. I have a couple of recipes I wanted to post. A lot of this also, I would much rather have accurate spacing between tomatoes. So like I tried to space each tomato plant about 12 to 24 inches from each other. And that really enables good root spacing and just hopefully better results. These are all San Marzano tomatoes, which are like in Italian cuisine, like the most prized one to make sauces with. And they're kind of like a really delicious plum tomato that you can really do a lot of things with. They also taste great fresh, but they're really prized for their sauce making abilities. These are like yellow pear tomatoes, which are like in the cherry variety. And you can slice them in half. You can put them in salads. You can eat them like candy. They're really good. And here are all just different varieties of eggplants. I did fingerling and white eggplants and just regular garden variety eggplant. Yeah.
Show them the blueberry bush?
Oh, should we show them the blueberry? Oh, wait, let's do the sunflowers first.
Oh, okay.
Charles, I have a question. Did you plan ahead of time where you were going to put the plants, or did you just kind of have a whole bunch of stuff and as you went decided to plunk them in? How did you plan where to put different things?
Okay, so this is interesting. So I wanted somewhere, I kind of knew we plotted out the trellises first. So over here, we figured there's no windows over here. So this would be a good spot for a trellis. It could handle the height of it. If the cucumbers went all the way to the top, they would still be happy. And then over here, it was the same situation. It's pretty much, I would have got another trellis if I could have fit it in. But so, with that knowledge, I wanted to keep the cucumber. I'm going to put in cucumbers. Right now I have yellow squash and zucchini. So those really like the trellis. Or you could do watermelon, but those get pretty heavy, or cantaloupe. You could do snow peas, snap peas, any kind of beans, string beans. But those you really want to grow along the trellis because that's kind of, I work backwards with the trellis in order to get that sort of situation. I knew that I wanted it. I love tomatoes. More than half of my garden is tomatoes. So I wanted to have all my tomatoes in a good spot and also to keep the basil with that. And kind of everything else I did play around with, the peppers with the peppers, the eggplants with the eggplants. I try to make sure that the artichokes had good sun, but that didn't work out too good. So we planted and God laughs at my artichokes. And yeah.
Are there certain plants that go well with other plants?
Tomatoes and basil. I don't know. Sometimes they say peppers don't go good with tomatoes. Eggplants go good with cucumbers. The real best thing, what I've heard is the best is squash, beans, and
corn.
Squash, corn, right. Those are the three sisters. That's the way the Native Americans do that. The problem is they take up a lot of space, and I didn't really want to plant all three of them together because they really require like a tremendous field in order to get a decent yield. But maybe next year I could get another little space in the garden to work on some more.
Okay.
You could grow corn. We used to be in another house. In the other house, I had more like growing space, and I did grow corn. I had like 5 stalks of it, but the corn didn't turn out the best. And that area was very, very heavily. It would get a lot of rain, and it was just more wet and marshy. So that, like a lot of those things, didn't necessarily do the best. And also, it wasn't so gated off, so a lot of the animals would get to it. But this, I'm just working with like my favorite things to eat. So that's tomatoes, basils, eggplant, peppers. Pumpkin would be really fun to eat, but I felt it was too much work, and I'd rather just buy it in the supermarket.
You know,
Well, it
the
looks like
sunflower.
you planted a lot in not that huge a space. It's not that wide from the house,
Yeah.
and you have a huge amount of plants there.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, eggplants also. Eggplants are like one of my favorite things to grow. In Syrian cuisine, you could always use eggplants. You could get pretty creative with them. Me and Joelle love them. She makes the best eggplant lasagna with like cheese and roasted vegetables, and it's unbelievable. And she does also an eggplant shredded chicken thing in like very Syrian style eggplant shredded chicken. It's like one of my favorite things.
Ooh,
Really,
that
really.
sounds like a recipe to share.
And yeah, share it, Joelle.
Okay,
Yeah,
very easy.
no,
It's
it's not
time
that
consuming.
easy.
It
It's
is
very
time
time consuming. Yeah.
It's very easy.
Yeah. But eggplants also, you could pick one week and you could go back to the same plant next week and you have a whole nother eggplant, which is really kind of fun. It's one that keeps growing and growing and growing up until October, November. The quicker you pick them, the quicker they grow.
Somebody asked again, how to keep the animals away, and then Avi mentioned how marigold keeps squirrels away. They don't like the smell.
Yeah, that's a big marigold grower. Has got a lot of marigolds. I mean, I feel like I'd say I don't really like them, but a lot of times they do keep away. It's very good as an insecticide, and like it just does ward a lot of animals away. But I don't necessarily have that situation here. Basil keeps away a lot of them. Pepper plants keep away a lot of them. Some people line the perimeter of their property with pepper plants and basil plants, the perimeter of the garden, or you could, invest in the fence or deer repellent. I think a good idea to do is to try to figure out where, like, what this you feel like you have a lot of in the backyard, and try to nets. The nets are good for fruiting trees. The nets are good. Like we just put in a couple of blueberry bushes. They were like, you could get like a good sized blueberry bush. New Jersey is actually notorious for having the best blueberries in the world. The Pine Barrens, which are about 2 hours away from Deal, have like some of the best blueberries that you could find. And you go to regular, probably cold $20, $30 a bush, and I'll see how they grow. I pretty much fertilize them in the beginning of the season, maybe later on, and they pretty much just grow out. The thing is, they do attract a lot of birds. So mine haven't turned blue yet. I'll see where they are from there. Like the blueberries are pretty green right now. You have more questions?
Not yet.
No? Should we do sunflowers?
Yes.
So.
And Home Depot sells animal repellent, but you have to reapply after the rain.
Right.
And there's also recipes online for.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they had she had a persistent groundhog, she said.
Oh, yeah. So.
The Wi-Fi is breaking up.
I was bother me, and sunflowers are really, really good for growing in those corners. First of all, you get full amount of.
Oops, can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we lost him.
Yeah, they probably lost the Wi-Fi. It'll probably take a second for him to get onto his data.
Back.
Yeah, just for, that swap, that second where you like out, you're out of the range of the Wi-Fi and you switch over to data.
All right.
So we'll give him a second.
Does he have to sign back in?
No, I think he's still here. Oh, no, there, we just lost him. Yeah, he's going to sign
Okay.
back in.
All right, he'll come back in a minute.
He's back right now.
Mhm.
Unmute.
Hi, sorry, the Wi-Fi went out. Okay.
Yeah.
We're back. Sorry.
Sorry.
All right.
So, what I did was I utilized kind of like dead corners where the grass wouldn't really grow, and it was very muddy and just a good accumulation of water. And I thought about sunflowers, which were really good into growing in them because they really do absorb a lot of water, and they're pretty, and you could eat them later. I like more like plants that I can eat, and not so much plants that look nice. They're nice, but to grow, I kind of really like And also what I did was we have a little fire pit, and I took all the fire pit ashes, and it's a good way of, instead of like pulling out a plastic bag, I took all the fireplace ashes, and I just sprinkled them on top, and that adds a lot of nutrients to the soil and promotes growth of new plants.
So you directly put the seeds in the soil?
Yeah, I put the directly seeds in the soil, and afterwards I just covered it up with more soil and a bit of ashes.
Uh-huh. You know if some people use old coffee grounds that you've made the coffee? What is that good for?
So things that need coffee is slightly acidic. And from what I understand, plants that like high acidity do very good with a bit of coffee. I think everyone's been asking me about gardenia plants. I wish I knew anything but what they smell like in a candle, but not much other than that. They're really nice. They smell amazing. And after the rain, they make your whole backyard smell great, but they happen to be extremely temperamental plants that I bought Joelle one, and it's not looking too good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the one in Brooklyn. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, I meant to tell you. But they say that gardenia likes acidity. I believe tomatoes like acidity, pineapples. There's a few different plants, if you do your research. Different pH in soil definitely affects plants for the better or the worse. Some people are really, really into that. I do have a bit of ADD, so I don't really test my soil. But people use pH strips in order to test their soil and try to get better results through that.
Miriam Barry also said eggshells are good for soil, as well as the water you boil the eggs in.
Oh, I didn't know the water you boil the eggs in.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
People always say that you get a really beautiful rose bloom out of that if you use eggshells next to roses. Certain flowering plants do very, very well with eggshells. And in compost in general, compost is like black gold. You can take all your, vegetable trimmings, potato skins, carrot roots, the end of celery, the bag of grapes that went bad, just throw it all together in a compost if you really have the time and space.
Oh,
wow.
And if you don't mind a little bit of a mess.
Well, I look forward to seeing your sunflowers.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah, me too. Hopefully, it's going to be fun.
When do they come up?
They say 75 to 90 days. And I'll just show you. I have this one walking around the house. I'm looking for a good spot for them. These are American hybrid. So American giant hybrid. They say the bloom goes to about 12 inches wide, which is pretty impressive. Joelle used to go to a college called Purchase. And it wasn't the prettiest college, but they had the craziest big sunflowers just growing everywhere. It was really like such a nice experience. We went there last fall. And, I just I was like, I wonder where the seeds come from. I reached into the head of the sunflower. I just pulled out a couple of seeds, and they weren't roasted or salted or dried, but they were still like pretty edible. So I'm sure I'm going to find out online how to make them, in the traditional SY Saturday afternoon style, where you just sit there and play games and eat them. It'd be a lot of fun.
And Miriam Barry wrote that gardenias are evil. You buy them, they're beautiful buds. As soon as you bring them home, the buds fall off, and you end up frustrated and disappointed.
It's true.
I know.
Thank you. We put it in the sun, it gets a suntan. You put it in the shade, it wants the sun. They're very temperamental. My mother was the only one that I saw could do good with them, but she sits there. She has a thing on wheels, and she brings it to the front of the house and then the back of the house. It's like, it needs a suntan. Oh, it's cold. She puts a blanket. She's very, but they are beautiful flowers. The other thing that I want to kind of work on growing is peonies. Peonies are really, really beautiful flowers. You could cut them when they're tiny, and they could grow in a glass or in a vase. I wish I could. Maybe at the end of the season, I'll pick some up. They seem to be easier to grow. They're perennial. They grow year after year, which is really a beautiful and fun flower. You can only find them in the florist for about a month and a half out of the year. And Joelle's new favorite, she called them paninis.
I wanted to show you after 5 days. I don't know if you could.
You want to see blueberries or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Charles, wait, Charles.
Yeah.
Just want to show you if you can see. These are sunflowers. Uh-oh, I just got it all over my computer, the dirt.
Let's see what you got.
Can you see? These are
Oh,
sunflowers.
how long ago did you plant those?
I planted them
Yeah.
on May 31st.
Oh, that's my birthday.
Happy
So they're
birthday.
as old as me.
So, yes. So they're sprouting after just like 5 days.
Wow.
And yeah, and that's on my windowsill. And then these were from like maybe 10 days, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And these are what I've been
Wow.
trying to plant outside. Right now they're on my windowsill and getting leggy, and I got to plant them outside. But that's been my fun, is my windowsill.
You know, it reminds me, when I
Yeah,
went to
awesome.
Israel, they had the most delicious, you know, Israelis are very big into sprouts. So they'll do chickpea sprouts. They'll do, you know, green pea sprouts. And I had sunflower sprouts that were really, really great. They were a little bit like nutty. You put a little bit of olive oil and salt in them. It was really delicious. So that's what that is. You could do like,
So this would
what do
be,
you call the kind of sprouts? Yeah, they have a seed sprouter that you can really work with, and you could buy them on Amazon. They have all different. It's kind of like a mesh basket inside of a plastic Tupperware that you sit there in water, and then the sprouts come out of there, and you could add it to salads. You could do it with lentils. You could do it with chickpeas. You could do it with a bunch of different stuff. But sprouts in themselves are delicious. Broccoli, you know, microgreen sprouts. They're all like really, really delicious things to work with.
well, I'm hoping to plant these all around my neighborhood.
Yeah, it's great. See, what I like about you, Linda, is you do it, and then you, what you do is you do it, and then you kind of, it's a good way to like, to make quick friends. You give them out, like, because you don't have the space for it, and that's what I really like about planting too. You could really
Well, I already
easily,
gave some to my neighbors down the block and some neighbors in the building next door. So we'll see if
Right.
they grow into big sunflowers. That's what I'm hoping.
yeah,
So,
they're really gonna love you when they come up, and
yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of fun, and you could easily, you know, we all plant certain things that don't come through, and then a little bit of something that you have too much of, you don't have the space. So it's kind of cool to get that balance.
So what are you going to show us now?
Oh, so here, Joel, how to do the flippy? Flip, here we go. There we go. So these are actually blueberry bushes over here. And you can actually, the guy, they were like, I think 25 or 30 bucks. And they grow big, and they get bigger every year. So you can see actually it's pretty to have blueberries form. Before that, they kind of have like a shell on them, like a gooseberry or a tomatillo, kind of like where it flowers, and then the fruit comes out of the flower, and sometimes like the remnant of the flower is still on them. And it's really cool. I'm kind of afraid because they do say the birds get to them. We do have a lot of birds that come in the backyard. So I think maybe the best thing to do, hopefully in the future, is to get some kind of net to throw over them. But we're all blueberry fiends in this house. So I feel that it's something that's going to be a lot of fun to work with and to use. Oh, wait, Josh, should I send you the recipes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So
I'm trying to think. Yeah, maybe text them to me. Then I could post them.
hey, what happened to my recipe?
Maybe it's in your notes.
Yeah, it's in my notes. Oh, no, deleted? Come on.
No. Let me see.
Joel helps with everything. She's the
Yeah,
best.
here, yeah, you
The
could
potatoes one?
talk. You could talk.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you see the?
Where do you
It's not
put
good.
it?
Oh, no,
No.
I'll do the. I'm worse than a 3-year-old.
No.
But yeah, so it's kind of fun. I like to plant a lot of things that I use a lot. Like I don't feel like I use marigolds a lot, so I don't really plant them. They're pretty, but I don't know. Like what's everybody else planting? What have you had a lot of success with? Usually if it's a good tomato year, you get a lot of tomatoes, and like everybody else has amazing tomatoes. If it's a good pepper year, the same thing.
Anybody else planting stuff?
Yeah.
Let's hear. You have to unmute. Miriam, are you planting things? I don't know if they can unmute.
Yes, I unmuted, yes. I
Okay.
did a little garden. I put tomatoes, 3 types of tomatoes, My parsley came back, and I think sage came back, and I have a blue tomatoes, peppers. What else? I'm trying to remember. Tomatoes, peppers, squash. Okay, but I think and cucumbers. So I'm going to put a trellis for the cucumbers because I never do too well. And I have a groundhog that loves to dig under my fence. And I think because I have blueberries, I think I'm going to put some mesh over it.
Oh, you do have blueberries. How many? This is your first year of blueberries? You had them before?
I planted it last year, and it came back in the garden. It came back in the little garden. Then I have a little 2x0. Your garden is giant compared to mine. Okay.
Yeah, but you could. If I could suggest, if you find another spot, you could increase your. I split it up. I did herb garden on one side. I did something else. If you find another spot that the kids aren't going to trample all over, and that you could kind of sneak away with, you could get more. Like I'm looking, I wanted to do a salad garden somewhere, I feel like you could sneak somewhere. You could always find something, or even those railing planters that cost like $15 at the gardening store, and you could put them over the railing and just, I've seen people grow kale in there. I see people grow all kinds of salad in there.
And I have some rose bushes that somehow the gardener came and mowed down all of my stuff. No idea why. I had some hydrangeas that I planted. And every year he doesn't do anything. And this year he just mowed everything down.
You got to be around when those guys come around.
You would think they would recognize plants. They took down my peony bush, but it's there. So I put sticks around it, and I told my daughter, just make sure they don't touch it because I'm not in deal now. And it'll come back. They do come back. I know that they'll come back. It's just, they need this.
Right.
They knocked down my lilies, but deer like lilies. I found out deer enjoy lilies because they eat the buds right. Somebody's eating the buds right off.
Right. Yeah, they love to. Those groundhogs are the biggest trouble. And even if you put the fence, a lot of times they like go under the fence.
Yeah.
I see somebody I shared like a cute little recipe if you want to try something new. I'll probably share my my cilantro cherry recipe, which is really good. Who's growing mushrooms? Mo, you growing mushrooms? That's pretty cool. How'd you do that? Someone, Mo, is growing mushrooms? I never heard of anybody growing I mean, I have mushrooms on my property, but they weren't growing. They're just, just cesspoolly. Somebody said mushrooms. That's pretty cool. Yeah. But so you did put the nets over them. Miriam, where'd you get the nets over the blueberries?
I didn't get nets. I'm gonna have to get something. I'm gonna have to. I mean, I might even in fabric stores. I might just get fabric. I might just get like a piece of screening and just put it over.
And this way, idea.
Yeah, I'm gonna try something. Last year I did pretty well with last year I forgot. I didn't plant anything last year. I think I planted and I moved the blueberry to the closed area because before that it was everybody ate it. I moved it from the front of the house to the back. Parsley came back, and I think it's sage. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm going to see in a little while what it looks like.
Your parsley came back from last year, right?
Yes. It was growing this year.
Yeah, that's it. Same thing happened with me. Usually it dies after the winter, but we had a very mild winter.
Right. It reseeds. I think it reseeded itself. I don't think it was the root. I think it just reseeded itself, and the seeds were there, and it grew. And
it might be the root. There's a Russian place by me, grocery store, and I didn't know this parsley have a root. If they allow it to grow big enough to have a root the size of a carrot.
Oh.
So yeah, and I bought it one time in the Russian grocery store. I turned it into a soup, which was pretty cool. But I feel like that, I think it's the root usually dies because it's supposed to be like we're zone 6 or zone 6A or zone 6B, depending on whichever zip code you're in. But they generally are like just zone 7 where they could handle a little bit of frost, but not like too strong frost. I feel like it was, let's say, our winter was more similar to like a Mediterranean winter, so that's why like parsley came back.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting, but I wouldn't bank on it coming back next year.
Yeah, listen, I'll plant it again. Usually I buy a plant, throw it in. Oh, and I planted basil. I forgot. I think I got 2 kinds of basil I put in. I forgot.
Yeah, that's delicious.
Right.
You have a good pesto recipe?
I have, yeah. I have somebody in my house who's allergic to nuts, but we're able to we make it without, and it's very good.
You could even do it with seeds, pumpkin seeds. It's like, I don't know if they could have that. It's very good.
Yeah, we do the seeds. Yep.
Yeah.
Our
delicious.
garden club at the center, we made pesto a number of times when we were out in the garden. And it's really been fun. We cook up the pasta ahead of time and then we use the basil from our garden and we were outside there making our pesto. So I have a recipe if anybody needs it. I have it somewhere.
It's really, really great. I love pesto. Oh, should we send the cherry cilantro
I
salad?
didn't see that.
Oh, I have it in my pictures. I snapped a picture of it. It's like my screenshots.
Well, I see you put your herb roasted potatoes on here in the chat.
Yeah, it's a really good recipe. It's good for a barbecue or for Shabbat. It's definitely a crowd pleaser. Okay. How do you sustainably harvest basil? Okay, people pick individual leaves. Esther Abadi asked this question. People will pick individual leaves. It's better to go from the top to the bottom. The thing that a lot of people kind of mess up with basil is they allow for the flowers to grow on top. So when their flowers grow, you're going to see white flowers on top. You're like, oh, it's pretty. Look, my basil's so happy it's making flowers. It's too happy because it's going to generate seeds and then it's going to die. So the best thing you could do with basil is to clip the flowers off of it. And you'll see it probably a week after that, it'll start growing some more. You could clip down to the bottom or you could clip individual leaves and go from there.
So is it best to clip it where they branch? You know, so that they'll
The
grow
basil's
more
like my
from
favorite.
those.
I didn't see.
Oh, you didn't see it? Hold on. Where did you say to clip it? By the node, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought, that
Here it is.
you clip it down by the node
By
where
the
it
node,
branches out.
by the node of the
that-
leaf or the node of the branch?
By the node of the branch. Like
Right.
where it branches out. Then there'll be more little leaves
The
coming out
second
from
to
those
bottom
parts.
leaf type.
Yeah. Yeah, not all the
Right.
way down to the
This
soil.
is really a fun.
Uh-oh.
This is really also a very fun recipe I shared in the group. Oh, it's copy.
How do we copy the recipes out?
This is a fun. Joelle is she's my Indian tech support. She's the best.
Sure.
Mhm.
There we go.
If we want to copy out the recipes from
Yeah,
here,
do
how do we
some of it,
do
Jen.
that? I don't know how to do
I
that.
can't send a picture on here.
Oh, you can't?
I think there is actually a way.
Figure it out. I got
Not the host.
So she's gonna send it. You want to send it to the host?
No, you can't send a picture, honey.
Oh, you can't send the picture to the host?
It's just image.
Same flowers on Russian kale. So somebody said Russian kale. Kale, also the same thing. You're supposed to clip it before it grows flowers. A lot of lettuces, you really want to utilize the leaves. Even the earlier, the better. And a lot of times they'll still generate. You want to go from the outside in, clip the outer leaves, and then work your way into it. If it's flowering, it's most probably that the leaves are going to be a bit tough and bitter. What else? Any other questions?
Send an email to Linda, and then she'll put it in the when they send out the what do you call
Schedule.
on the times that we have exercise.
Mhm.
They can
Yeah. I can include it in the emails that go out for the, for this with the schedule, so they have the
put the
rest.
schedule.
Oh, great.
Great, great.
Okay.
How are you?
Anybody?
Mhm.
What? Good. How you doing, Gladys? Great to see
I'm
you.
doing good. I'm doing good. I just
you-
planted some parsley and but they were already the plants. I replanted,
So you cheated. No, I'm just
repotted.
kidding. It's okay.
Yeah, I did.
Great.
But I don't know. if
Did you
it's
grow the
gonna
cilantro
work.
or no?
Cilantro and parsley. Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
that I had a lot of.
I don't know. It's hard to get them. It's hard to get them to stick. I'm gonna see what happens
Right.
because I don't have a garden. I have just little planters.
That's all you need. Especially if you know you use something. If you know you use something a lot, that's all you need to plant.
Yeah. Thank you. I was away and I wasn't able to see the whole thing, but I saw that you do. My God, I want to have a farm. I
Thanks.
think that's gonna be.
It's gonna be what?
It's gonna be the future because a lot of people are gonna be eating plants more
Yeah.
than ever. More than ever.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Especially after the butcher's prices did go up a little bit. It's not a bad idea, and you can get really, really full from vegetables. That is really, really clean and fresh when they're from the garden. And it's a good way. You could have, you could have 2 burgers for dinner, or you could have 1 burger and a lot of vegetables, and it fills you up the same way.
it fills you up the same way.
Yeah, and it's healthier. You could do lettuce. It's good to, you also feel, now it's like every day, it's like a little bit less than before, but still the same. When you have things you grow and you say, oh, it's like a baby. Remember when it's a baby and now you get to eat it, but you don't eat babies.
It's beautiful.
It's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like you get to feel the sense of accomplishment.
Yes, absolutely. Very nice.
Yeah.
Gladys,
Yes.
remember me?
Oh, hey, Mom.
I know they told me he's your son-in-law and your daughter. I can't believe it.
How you doing? We love
Very
you,
good.
You're his
Very
number
good.
one fan.
Thank you. Very, very good. I miss you though.
I miss you too. I can't wait to see you again. God
Yeah.
willing, soon.
Yes, soon, soon.
Yeah.
Where
inshallah.
are you? You're in Deal, of course.
Yeah, I'm in Jersey. Where are you?
In Brooklyn.
Oh, you're in Brooklyn.
But are you going to be staying, doing Zoom classes for kids?
Yeah, I'm doing Zoom, and now I'm going to. Now I'm teaching outside.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
nice.
now I'm going outside to teach. But,
Ah,
I
you're
always
growing
found
beautiful.
that in Brooklyn, my vegetables and my flowers grew better in Brooklyn than they do in Jersey. I feel like
Really?
the soil here is so sticky. You know, I always felt like the Italians in Brooklyn had the most beautiful gardens. You know, they really I don't know, maybe it's just in their blood. They really
Yeah.
do beautiful things.
They know how to grow.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah, it's really in their DNA.
But there, your son-in-law is doing beautifully.
Oh yeah, he does great. Yeah, he's
So
really great. Yes.
I tell you, you should build a farm and maybe with a cover. What do they call those? That's the
Greenhouse.
greenhouses.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun.
We
Until
should
then,
have
I'm
a
in
Wait,
retail.
Charles, show
Yeah.
her what Joelle looks like. Let her meet my daughter. She
No,
never met my
Ma.
daughter.
I know, Joelle.
Yeah, you know, Joelle.
Hi. Okay.
That way she recognizes you. You can't,
I know, Joelle. I know her. She does the singing. I
Yeah,
love her too.
Thank you. Enough.
A beautiful family.
Yeah,
Everybody
thank
left because we are talking.
All right.
I told Linda and Ashley that this is the best thing that I could ever do because it keeps the warmth of being together, even though
I
you're not
agree.
together.
I agree. And you know what? It started me doing I planted this year because of Charles from seeds. I've never planted from seeds before. I've only planted plants. So that was exciting.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
know he's great.
Yeah,
He showed us what he does. I loved it.
Yeah.
And
I tried
told
doing
Linda,
some peppers from the seeds from my red pepper, so I'm waiting to see if they come up.
They take a long
First
time
thing
to
you did,
germinate.
things. And he's also a chef. He's a great chef, gourmet chef.
like it.
That's fun. I don't know. It's fun when that's the best thing when you want good stuff. Instead of going to the grocery store, you just go outside.
Right. Table to whatever they call that. What do they call?
Farm to table.
Farm to
Farm
table.
table.
Oh, gosh. I
Does
love
anybody
that.
have any more questions for Charles, our expert gardener?
Anybody? Or I'm not an expert. I learned everything off of the internet. but
And
but that's
experience.
when I don't do the Zoom class and I'm back at work. I hope you guys can still hit me up for questions, ask me. You know, I enjoy it. It was really fun. It started off as a fun hobby that I got to share with everybody, and everybody taught me so much. And
Yeah.
you know, I learned a lot. And people asked me questions, and it was really fun. And I feel that gardening is like Gladys said, it's kind of like archaic because everyone's been doing it for thousands of years, but it's very it's like the wave of the future in a way. Because
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that we'll be able to rebuild our garden at the center that we've had, the raised
you,
bed
Miriam.
garden.
That's so
I
sweet.
don't know what's happening with it now. I haven't been there since the beginning of March, so it might be a mess. And I'm really hoping that we'll be able to get over there and clean it up and fix it up and rebuild it and do it again.
Do you do it with the children from the
Yeah,
preschool?
usually for the last 10 years, we've had a program in the summer with the summer camp. But this year, we don't know what's happening yet.
Right. Yeah.
And the garden isn't planted. It's probably all just a mess. I don't know.
Right. It's really nice for children to really like have a garden and see science, you know, right before your eyes.
Yes. Well, a number of the people watching now have been part of our adult garden club. Miriam, Gladys, is that Fortune on there? Yeah.
Yeah, she's
So-
there, but she didn't put herself out.
Yeah.
And-
Linda, I have
and,
a question. Could we start
yeah.
like a garden fund that we could generate, like we could get like the next Zoom class, everyone could give a donation for a gardening
Can we?
program and we could bring it to the board and we could
Well,
like a
let's
community
let's
garden
talk about it.
education.
We can talk
Yeah.
about it afterwards and just see what your ideas are and how we would go about that. It would be great.
Sure.
That is a beautiful idea.
Yeah. 'Cause
Teach
we've
the next
incorporated-
generation.
We've incorporated it in camp and then it was in my social services budget and stuff. So, but now like, cause the raised beds are starting to fall apart, they need to be rebuilt. And after now, like, I don't know, again, like what's sort of spontaneously growing there. I mean, we had daffodils in the fall that we planted, but they're, I'm sure, keeled over and we need to clean it up. Sometimes sunflowers regenerate themselves and grow there on their own. So those are nice. And some of the plants are perennials too. So we'll see what's happening there. Hopefully soon. So, but yeah, we'll talk.
Hopefully.
Maybe you could also do like a flower gardening like Zoom. I'd love to see about flowers and perennials and things like that.
You got to teach that class, Ma.
No. Yeah,
Yeah.
You're
You're much
I
better at
edged
that
last
than me.
night.
You're the only one that's Gardenia survived. I don't understand. But
I don't know. I edged last night. My garden looks like a thing of mud. You have no idea what I did.
Ooh,
I
yeah.
really chopped it up. I did it in nighttime. I mean, I didn't want to stop. Forget about it in the morning. But it looked like.
Yeah, I feel you. I also did a little. I was like, no. Yeah. Too much rain. It was very heavy, but the tomatoes should be doing good after that. They like heavy rains in the early spring, I think.
Well, somebody I was reading said that the rainwater is better than the hose water for these for the vegetables and the.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that. Maybe Jersey, there's fluoride in the water and stuff.
I think there's mosquitoes. I'm gonna call them up. They're supposed to come back in spring.
Ah, there's Grandpa. I see Grandpa Jack over there. Hey. I didn't even scroll to see everybody. Hey, Grandpa. He's taking. Oh, and Betty. I caught you. Let's see who else. Ashley. I think I see. Hey, Marlene, Grandpa.
Oh,
Hey, Aunt Betty.
I know them. They're your relatives too?
Yeah. It's pretty much all my relatives.
Oh, and
Great,
Betty-
amazing family.
That's great. All right. Well,
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you,
Hopefully, we can
Jennifer.
have another session. It was really
Yeah,
a
it was so
blast.
fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you, Linda.
Bye, Gladys.
Thank you,
Nice
Gladys.
meeting you.
Thank you, Miriam. Everyone sharing their
Gladys.
thoughts and stories.
we'll
Sari.
figure out another something.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll figure out something else to grow.
Okay.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.